All right. Hey, we're getting ready to look on chapter 3. And I just told Justin I talk a lot. And so we're going to try to be quicker with these things and not go over an hour. We could talk more than what we have, but we'll try to condense it a little bit better. And that starts with me. Chapter 3, as you see on the bottom of your screen, right there by our cool technology, is dealing with the hijacking of the pro-life movement. I'm going to be honest with you. This chapter utterly boils my blood, and I want to fight. To be honest with you, so I'm going to try to be as blunt as I need to be, but not say what I want to say in some of these. And so I've given Justin the go ahead to cool me off if I get too excited here. But this is, we talked about earlier as we started this, that some of these things we could agree to disagree on. Like 2 weeks ago when we came out with one, it was global warming. I've got a bunch of thoughts about global warming, but it is a different type of issue than the pro-life issue. The pro-life issue is a no-nonsense issue. It's not a gray area. It is pretty simple. And there is no room for disagreement here in my mind. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I think we would both, right up from the get-go, we should pretty much say we are abolitionists.
Yes.
We think abortion should be illegal. Those who commit it should be prosecuted, and we view it breaks the 10 Commandments. It breaks the original design for mankind. I think we see the effects of it in this fallen, broken world, and it's despicable in many ways how people try to justify it. And this chapter just makes it even harder for us to control emotions, from anger to sadness to across the spectrum. And I think there is a responsibility for us to not just expose some of what's going on in these movements that we hear as being pro-life. It's easy to say those who are pro-abortion, that's easy to identify. It's the ones who say they are pro-life, and what does that actually mean as they define it? What are they seeking to accomplish? How does that affect the church? How does that affect families? I think we could say there's even a bigger aspect to this of how it has impacted culture, life around us as far as families go, and how that family unit has just begun to dissipate. And the effects we see in the world today go back to this. And it just speaks to a culture of death, in a sense. Like there's this desire by many to just they're just fascinated, and we see that all the time, especially this time of year. We see this fascination with death, with the dead, this side of things that we just used to. You didn't really talk about it very much because there's no joy in that.
Yeah.
But for some reason, culture and people have made this to be the norm in many senses. And even, I think we would admit, we've grown numb to parts of it as we have grown up in it, experienced it. But the need to speak on these issues and expose those who are not truly looking out for the life that God has created, that's a huge responsibility I think we have, and that we're going to try and hit today.
And you made the comment, I always say this word wrong. What is the term for no abortion period? What is that?
Abolitionists.
Abolitionists. I always say that wrong. We stand on that, and we stand on that heavily. That is our end goal. And I think with that being said, though, I will stand on that. I'll never hide that fact. But anytime we can chip away at the abortion mill that we have, I'm happy to hop on that. You know what I mean? So if they came out and said there's a 10-week abortion ban, I'm not going to lie to anybody. I'm not going to hide my intentions. I'm not happy until it's completely gone. But if we can chop it down to 10 weeks, we can chop it down to 10 weeks, and that's it. And that's a net positive. But again, I'm not satisfied with that. And so we want to keep going. I just want to see it completely wiped out. And because of that is the reason that it's human life at conception. It is human life, and no matter the situation, to take the life of that child, the human being, that it can only be a human being. It's never going to turn into a alligator or a bird or anything other than it is. When the sperm and the egg come together, it is absolutely a human life, and it's just in the process of growth. And so, no matter the situation, killing that is
Murder.
is murder. Yeah, and you can't get around that.
And no exceptions either.
No,
Like
it's no exception.
anytime you hear this talk, there's this debate on, well, make the exception for this, for incest, rape, all these different things. And we're not belittling any of that. That would be a horrible situation to deal with. And we're not going to deny that. However, that's not that child's fault.
Yes.
And God can redeem so many things in this life.
You're literally doubling upon a grievous sin with another grievous sin.
Yes.
And that's really the issue. And what makes me so angry about that argument is it's not actually the argument. Because anytime you get into that argument and you see it on the news all the time, the rape and incest and all that kind of stuff. Okay, great. So let's ban it up until that point. Oh, no, we're not talking about it. It's disingenuous. And they're just trying to pull on your emotional strings and pointing to the worst possible facts. But they are that is a small majority of what takes place in the abortion industry. That's a small majority. And again, I would be all for the idea of banning everything up until that point. Now, I wouldn't be satisfied with it, but I'd be all on board because it would astronomically shrink the abortions, but that's not even on the table. And that's, again, a disingenuous argument. And so that really frustrates me. I would, what I say is the fact of we should increase the penalties for incest. We should increase the penalties for rape and take those more seriously and have harsher punishments on those things. But we kind of hesitant on those things as well. But again, that's a terrible thing. We're not downplaying it, but we just don't want to double down on grievous errors in that way, because again, it's still a child. It's not the child's fault. And I would lean to the fact of it doesn't erase it to allow an abortion in that case either. It doesn't erase it. It doesn't help the situation. Again, difficult, hard, but killing is not the right answer for an innocent child either.
Yeah. Can we say too, murder is not healthcare? Can we say that too, just up front, just so we're all on the same page where we're coming from?
Yeah.
It is. It just, you can justify and pretty up murder all you want, but at the end of the day, murder is not healthcare.
It's not. And we see, you cut out a little bit there, but we see it's the complex, the industrial abortion complex, and it's just sickening. I'll push it here as well, is the fact that we've gotten to a point that we cannot trust the medical field on this issue. And I would challenge you here, and this is me speaking, maybe not Justin. I didn't ask him about this first, but we even need to look at the pill and stuff that they're pushing as well. When you start messing with the chemical imbalance, a lot of times this isn't a stopping of the egg and the sperm. It's just setting up the body to where that will reject it. And that, that's the level we should be looking at as well, because we're essentially doing the same thing. And so we need to be very careful on those things as well. But again, we can't be very trusting of a healthcare system that has murdered millions of babies at this point, tens of millions of babies at this point in the womb. And we need to take it very, very seriously and look at it and go from there. But I think that was good. We didn't talk about that, but to just kind of lay our opinions down real quickly for everybody to know and where we stand and be very clear on that stuff.
Yeah. And again, this isn't a Democrat Republican thing for us. This is we would be far conservative of even what the official Republican position is. This is what we try to do is come at this from a biblical perspective.
I will highly criticize the current trajectory of the Republican Party on this.
Same.
It's not good. We're losing them pretty quickly when it comes to this. They're siding with, they're trying to get more votes. They're astronomically better. I mean, astronomically better, even at this poor stage that they're at. They're astronomically better than the platform of death on the other side. But I will criticize them. Trump's current position is not my position, but it is a lot better. And the fall of Roe v. Wade has been a great thing. We should celebrate that. And he was instrumental in that. We'll get to that in a second. But again, he's not where I am, but give credit where credit's due on that.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's jump in.
Yep, let's go. You guys know our position clearly now, so we can talk about this and show our frustration.
So you've either turned us off or you're excited to hear more.
Yeah, you're right. Go. Okay. You turned us into the censoring police, or you're looking.
Yeah.
What she does here is really just brings the receipts for all of these conservative people. You'll see frequently the Gospel Coalition brought up. Karen Pryor? Am I saying her name right?
Yeah, Karen Swallow Pryor. Yeah.
Yep, she's a big one. Russell Moore is a big one. Beth Moore is a big one. Another guy, the Gospel Coalition is a big one. And she just really lays out for us their utter hypocrisy that they lay out on a political spectrum. It is just utter hypocrisy. It's despicable. And again, I'm trying to calm myself down here, and just flat out evil. And the way they have tried to move the goalposts for a pro-life stance is just utterly wolves in sheep's clothing. They should be called out, called to repentance, and it should be public because this is just despicable and just boils my blood about how deceptive they are with these things. Where do you begin? Karen Pryor or whatever really kind of pointed out. She starts off with Bashan starts off with the mum, almost downtrodden reaction to the fall of Roe v. Wade. Yeah. Why don't you take off from that point?
Let me just read what she says.
Yeah.
She just says it came as something. Well, let me say this first. Like, you would think the immediate response from most pastors, most evangelical leaders, Christian leaders would be one of, okay, yeah, we can do something with this. We can move in the right direction. It's not far enough, but we can celebrate this. We can move in the right direction now as far as the value of life, being pro-life, air quotes. But here's what she says. It came as something of a shock then when many of the big-name evangelical leaders who were supposed to represent pro-life activists like her sounded distinctly less than celebratory. Instead, a number of them used the fall of Roe as an opportunity to argue for bigger government and to bolster the pro-abortion narrative that Christians only care about babies before they're born. That hit me. And it's true. Like, that's what you started to hear was when you're looking out and, I know not everybody does this, but we follow the trends and these Christian leaders and things like that. That's we view that as guarding as pastors the sheep, and we want to make sure what people are reading, what people are listening to, those types of things influenced by is good stuff. So when this happens and we start looking for the celebratory things that people would be writing about, where are they? Like, I'm looking for them. And then you start seeing these little things start popping up by people like Karen Swallow Pryor, who has a major influence online, Russell Moore, Gospel Coalition, others.
Huge.
Yes. I mean, he was on CNN's Morning Joe show yesterday. So this is not somebody who somebody else will talk about is David French, who has a huge following for some reason as well. I don't get that one, but
I don't get that one either.
But like, there's nothing. Like, we were looking for it, and there's hardly anything. And there's a few faithful pastors that we follow.
Hey, I'll throw myself under the bus here.
Go for it.
Beth Moore
Yes.
is also one of them.
Yes.
Beth Moore is very guilty here as well in revealing her true character as she's gone. She's a very popular one, especially in our circles.
Yes. Very much.
Utterly failed in this point. Just terrible.
It's like, instead of celebrating what had happened, some turned it to, well, now the church has a bigger role, that's, I think, okay. Others, they turn to how this will affect women. Others turn towards, well, now we need to rely on the government more to help these individuals. And what are they going to do now to, I'll say it, to commit murder? Like, they're going to have, like, our state's one of them. I mean, Illinois is one of these states where we're like the Mecca for abortions now. Like, they will pay people to come over to our state to have abortions. Like, it makes absolutely no sense.
Taxpayers' money,
yes,
to reimburse them from come over here to have abortions, to beg doctors that want to do abortions to come over here and live in Illinois. I mean, this is terrible. I mean, it's awful. All taxpayer money, by the way.
And the problem is that instead of appealing to a biblical argument for what they were saying, it's all secular. It's all like humanist reasoning that they are using the worldview of this culture to justify what they're saying, instead of, well, here's actually what the church and what the scriptures say and how the church can respond to this now in a biblical way. And we were looking for this, and it was nowhere to be found. You know, it's in particular affected Black communities. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, and here's the big thing when they start throwing in the idea of, well, we need bigger government, we need bigger resource pools for entitlements and all this kind of stuff, because a lot of times, these abortions are happening because they're not able to, they don't have the funds to take care of them and all this and that. And we'll get into the fact of, well, mothers have to be the only one to take care of them. The father one's away. Yeah. Let me again give us me and Justin's opinion on this as well. I'm for something really radical. I'm for something that the man needs to not only provide and take care of the child, but the man needs to provide for the woman that he's had those relationships with. And in fact, what I would say is it's called marriage.
Yeah.
And he should take care of them, like both of them. He should house them and love them like Christ even loved the church. That's what I think the man should be doing in these situations.
That's not what you think, Michael. That's what God thinks.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real here.
That's what marriage is.
God's design for the family.
Yeah. That's the foundation of every society, and the family is marriage. And that's what I'm going to be pushing for. So I don't want to hear this, oh, the men should be taking care of their children, and the woman that had their child, which should be their wives, by the way. But anyway, what they're doing is, when they give you this idea, they start moving the goalposts over to all life care. And what all life care is, government subsidies, government handouts, which that's a deep topic, and I'll just kind of pump my brakes on that. But
yeah, I don't think we have time to dive into all
that. But what is pointed to is, this was a heavy movement of the Johnson administration, especially towards Black communities in, she says, 1964. And what these welfare programs do is really incentivizes single, out of wedlock relationships and having babies when you're not married, because the welfare program incentivizes it. It would be more financially beneficial if me and my wife weren't married and we had our 4 kids. She would get more subsidies. Subsidies is probably the wrong word. She would be getting more government funding, food assistance, all of that, if she was a single mom of 4. Since we're married, we don't get those, and it's decentivized. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
To have it. And he points out, Ream points out to the fact that the Black communities as a whole who survived slavery and all of this kind of stuff was decimated and is continuing to be decimated by these welfare programs, because what they have essentially done is decentivized the family of one man, one woman having children in that, and made it way more beneficial on a low scale for government subsidies, that it's better for them just to have multiple children out of wedlock. And that has just utterly destroyed the Black community to the point where we're at a point now that 70% of Black children are born to single mothers. And nearly 40% of women who get abortions are Black, even though African American communities are only 12% of the population. Yeah. And now let me put the brakes on it real quick and just remind you that the abortion industry, what was her name? I'm going blank. Who started that? Was it Thatcher?
No.
That was the British president, right?
Margaret Sanger.
Say yes. Really started pushing for abortion to limit the Black population.
Yes.
That is.
Look it up.
You'll see it. Don't rely on me. Look it up and see what she said. And you see the effect of it going by. And so what's so frustrating about these supposedly conservative Christians that we have been naming off in the Gospel Coalition and all these, they're literally promoting the destruction of the family. And they're doing so over the cover of being compassionate. We can debate whether or not these social programs in a minimal form are not something that we can do. There's a debate there on either side, because we're called to love the poor, but I'm not called to love the poor by looking at you and saying that we need to use your tax money to love the poor. I'm supposed to love the poor myself. And so there's some debate on that. But what we see, and it is by the stats, is these government programs, these welfare programs, decimate God's plan for the family, because it produces 70% of children being born out of wedlock, because it's incentivized. And that's what's so just not only on the abortion end, but you're creating complete chaos.
Yeah.
And the fatherlessness of this nation is another area that it's devastating. And so
that's what we see. A lot of those Christian leaders, that's what they started pushing for, was a greater. I mean, Mike Edmondson, who writes for the Gospel Coalition, said, like Pryor, he said outlawing abortion would only be morally legitimate if accompanied by an expanded welfare state. I mean, Russell Moore said some of the same talking points. It's like, Michael, it's almost like these individuals were fed many of these talking points to say the same things. And one of the themes we see as we go through these chapters is that that's actually what was happening.
Yeah.
Like, these people, these influential leaders, are given the money backers, tell these people, here's the line you need to say. Here's the line you need to draw in the sand, if you will. Here's going to be your talking points on these issues. And in this particular one, I don't think it's a coincidence. All these key evangelical leaders began saying basically the same thing. We need more welfare. We need more programs. Even in a Secular Time magazine article, it said, we already have those things 3-1 compared to Planned Parenthood abortion clinics. Those programs are already there.
Yes. So, and clear that up as well. The pro-life people, okay?
Yeah.
I'll throw out choices in our area. We have these programs set up to help mothers in these situations, providing them education, providing them means to keep the baby, to do those things, to be an alternative to abortion. We spend as pro-lifers, we have a lot of different programs to do this. And that's what he was referring to there. Do you have that highlighted? Is that something you want to read? We don't have to, but
I've moved on.
Okay.
Although, I mean, Edmondson, I mean, when Roe was overturned, the response was near silence by a lot of these influential leaders. We've talked about the ERLC, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the SBC. Moore, being the leader, said absolutely nothing for weeks. And then we hear from him and guys like Edmondson. Here's what we see he focused on. He focused on the social programs that churches and lawmakers might offer as a response. His suggestions, like theirs, made zero mention, like you said before, of marriage, fathers, or how the men involved in unwanted pregnancies might be induced to provide the care expecting mothers need. That's what we heard.
Yeah.
Which does absolutely nothing.
So and here's why it's so aggravating. Every social program in the world can be implemented. Every unwanted child could get $1 million and live like kings. You know what they still need? A mother and a father that love each other and grow up in a nuclear family that God has designed for us.
Yep.
You're not dealing with the problem. Though, yeah, okay, we're supporting them so they don't do this. Yeah, but the problem is God has designed the family, which is the core of every civilization, as one man, one woman for a lifetime. In that relationship is as a married relationship, when they've committed to one another, that's when that sexual activity takes place. That's where children come from. And that is there for our good, our protection, and for the good of civilization. And so to not mention God's design in any way, shape, or form and just say, hey, we need more handouts is beyond comprehension for somebody that claims to be a follower of Jesus. It just does not make any sense. And again, it acts like pro-lifers don't care. Well, we do care because we have all these different organizations that my church supports, I personally support, that are there to be an alternative to just murder. It's not like we don't care. And at the same time, when you look at those welfare programs, it does not do any good to ask for absolutely no responsibility on somebody's end. The scripture talks about you don't work, you don't eat. Okay. And there has to be responsibility. We can't bottle feed generations of people off of somebody else's back and somebody else's labor. That's not right. And it doesn't help them in the end either. No. We should ask to raise the water level for responsible actions, for responsibility to take place. But again, we live in a society that we're not responsible for anything.
Doesn't care.
Big brother, the government needs to take care of me and bottle feed me. And it's my right for them to do that. Well, that's not scriptural either.
No.
And again, we have so-called conservative voices encouraging and supporting that. And that is where I get real mad, get real angry.
Yeah. I know. Let's keep this rolling because I'm under the header, he who must not be credited.
Okay.
There was a common thread amongst these evangelical, quote unquote, leaders that was kind of behind the scenes, but was evident if you looked at it closely. And that was, no matter what you think about the guy, Moore, both of them, Beth Moore, Russell Moore, many others, one of the things that became evident is that these people were never Trump people. It may not sound like a big deal at first. However, Trump was influential in the overturning of Roe by, nominating, getting the Supreme Court justices who ultimately decided that. And this backdoor I don't know what it is that they had personally against Trump. Some of them have made it clear, some have not. But you almost get the sense that there was something deeper going on than just, we just need to set up these welfare programs. Like their lack of response to what had happened, there was always this, or I shouldn't say always, there seemed to be commonly this sense of, well, since Trump did it, I can't be behind it. Or just because Trump did it, that doesn't mean he's pro-life. Or just because Trump did it, that doesn't mean, well, maybe we need to think better about how we handle this and how we talk about this and whether this is actually the way. And one of the ones who said this very clearly, which you've benefited from, I've benefited from, maybe you listening have benefited from, was Tim Keller, and who has since passed away. However, he said this. He said the Bible tells us that idolatry, abortion, and ignoring the poor are all grievous sins. But it doesn't tell us exactly how we are to apply these norms to a pluralistic democracy. We could question that point right there. But I know abortion is a sin, but the Bible doesn't tell me the best political policy to decrease or end abortion in this country, nor which political or legal policies are most effective to that end. How do you respond to that, Michael?
As she points out too, it's a completely misunderstanding of the role of the government. And the role of the government is the sword, and the sword is for maintaining life. You're dealing with the poor. Nobody's suggesting that we should murder the poor, or at least I'm not. And so the idea as a government, it is establishing what is right and what is wrong. The basic premise of life is the government's priority, and it has to establish that. Are you going to tell me that, well, those murderers down the street, yeah, that kid came and killed a bunch of kids at those schools, but we're not really for sure how the government's going to be able, we don't have the parameters of how we're supposed to discipline that. What are you talking about? You're making a bunch of word salad. And what are you disguising here? This should not be this is not a hard issue. This is not a gray issue. We are killing children in the womb, period. I mean, I don't know what we're trying to nuance our way through. Like the VeggieTale guy, it's all nuanced. I have a nuanced position. You don't have a nuanced position. You're hiding your true position, which you're fine with it. And you're trying to hide it in some way, shape, or form.
And it's interesting because as people are making these positions known, as Keller's making this position known, he's adamant that, well, voting for Trump is wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, he said that clearly, even though Trump, to his credit, did get Roe overturned. Now, he's not as far as we are, but he's much further than what the opposing sides are. And part of why I say there seems to be this behind the scenes vendetta against Never Trump is because as much as they talked about not voting for Trump, even if it meant the abolition of abortion, now Trump has never said that, but that's what they claim he will do. They did not make the same argument for saying anything about when Biden was running or now Kamala is running. Like, they don't say anything about exposing that they're up to supporting abortion up till birth, if not beyond. And this hypocritical standard, it's like, I don't know how you justify this.
And again, hypocritical is the point. I am not going to have any problem with you whatsoever if you look at me and say, hey, I have a problem. Trump's morally compromised on these issues. I don't want to vote for him. Okay. But it's hypocritical to take that position and then run it to the Democratic platform. Yeah. I mean, it's a complete hypocrisy. If you tell me, hey, Trump is no superhero. He's got moral issues all over the place. I get it. But what about
so
John F.
does
K?
the opposing side. Yeah.
Yeah, the opposing side has it. What about, John F. Kennedy?
Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe was running through the White House. Like I get it. And again, I think you're completely within your freedom to say, hey, Trump's not my guy. I'm not going to do that. Okay, excellent. No problem whatsoever. I disagree a little bit, but okay, fine. But to run over then and point everybody, as Keller did, as the Gospel Coalition did, to push everybody to the Democratic platform is complete hypocrisy. It's complete hypocrisy. And not only on like abortion, but LGBTQ rights, but you're literally pushing for the prosecution, or the prosecution is the right word, but the wrong word, persecution of brothers and sisters in Christ. This is the party of throwing bakers in jail because they didn't want to bake a cake for a homosexual marriage. Like Kamala Harris's vice president candidate, I can never remember his name, was pushing for a bill to where if you don't allow your kids to transition, meaning sex reassignment surgery, hormone blockers, if they don't do that, the state would have the power to take that child away from you. That's the other platform. That's what you're supporting, and that is complete hypocrisy. Complete hypocrisy. And these are what these guys have continued to do. That's what's so frustrating with this whole thing is you see the funding that we've talked about the last two chapters, the funding of this liberal movement by Soros and all this to undermine all of these positions, to point us more and more to a Democratic platform. That is just, again, it's just hypocrisy and frustrating. But
yeah. I just go ahead.
No, I'm just bringing myself down a little bit. But again, the idea of like, hey, Trump's got some moral issues. I don't want to vote for him. Okay, that's a perfectly fine position.
Yep.
As long as you're not hypocritical about it and go to the other side, like that just doesn't compute. It's not honest. And there's the frustrating part about all this. If Keller just said, hey, I've got a problem with Trump for these reasons, I can't vote for him. Okay, that's fine. But as she digs up, not only did he do that, but then he pointed everybody to a liberal platform, the Democratic platform, which is as anti-Christian as we've seen. And then she digs up the fact that every single staff person at his church that made donations all moved to the Democratic Party. And so they try to play it off as this idea of, well, kind of balancing it out of this side or another, but it all goes one direction. And it just shows you what is really going on in the background.
Yeah, it just shows you too that a lot of people can say they're pro-life, but that can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And as you quickly learn, it's many of the so-called pro-life leaders who are really standing in the way of what needs to be done. And that is the abolitionist movement. And we know that's radical. I mean, people, when they first talked about slavery being abolished, that was radical.
Yeah.
Yet we see the murder of children being done every single day, and they seem to not care to a degree about that.
Be unapologetic about our stance. It's a biblical stance. It's a good stance. And we should be unapologetic about it. But also at the same time, I've seen some errors on the other side where they're so in abortion completely, they won't take small victories. Take small victories, but do not move from your position. Take small victories and be honest. This is good, but we want better, and go from there and chip away. One last thing, we're hitting the 40-minute mark when we want to be done. One last thing is, again, that some of the conniving that is going on, the smoke and mirrors that they're doing for us, is the fact if they keep talking to conservatives about how all we want is power. It's a power game and this and that. And, you're trying to wield the government for, it's a power play and not how the Bible wants it. And again, that's completely one-way traffic. They're completely fine with the liberal direction and wielding power. And they're more how do you say that word?
Totalitarian.
Yes, there it is. They are more that direction than conservatives are in some cases. But all you see is one-way traffic from Keller, the Gospel Coalition, from Fringe, from Beth Moore, from all of those. You see them moving one direction. It's punch, 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 punch right. And the right needs to be punched sometimes. I'm part of that punch to the right-hand side, but it's all the yellow brick road for the left side. And then there's a good reason for that, is because that is where they are supporting. That's where they have thrown everything in there. And again, it's not a Christian stance. It's not. And it was so frustrating with these conservative, just be honest and just come out and tell everybody where you actually stand and trying to hold these labels that you don't actually follow.
Yeah. And I think, as Keller makes that point, we have to be discerning. And that's big point of her book here, is that Christians, biblical Christians who are committed to the sufficiency of the scriptures, the inerrancy of the scriptures, that we be more discerning in seeing where people are trying to manipulate us, guilt us, belittle us. I think even sometimes not say we're denying the true faith of the Bible, but almost for holding a strict scriptural stance, they will demean us for that too. So I think we have to beware. And I'll just say, beware of Karen Swallow Prior, beware of Beth Moore, beware of Russell Moore, beware of, I'll say some of Keller's older stuff is good and I still benefit from it, but I'd be aware of his stuff before he passed away. I'd be aware of David French. Those two names, Russell Moore and David French, you're going to see a lot because they write for some pretty big news agencies, New York Times. They're on there, CNN a lot, which should tell you all you need to know. Beware of them. They're not trusted evangelical Christian conservative leaders like they claim to be. And so beware of these people. Be discerning. Come ask us questions if you have it. We're going to come at this. I hope you know us by now well enough to know we're going to come at it from a scriptural position. We're going to come at it with the Bible.
And he's being way nicer than what I would be. So he's being nicer. But I agree with him completely. I would just, and that's part of my nature sometimes, but I would go from there. Also, do not accept this kitchen sink approach, as she labels it, of throwing every issue under the sun in pro-life. Okay. We talked about immigration last week. Opening up your borders to 15 million immigrants is not a pro-life issue. It is something completely different. It has nothing to do with the murders of babies in the womb. Don't let them shift the goalposts on you in absurd ways. But just to show you real quick, and I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name, but how absurd their position is. Maybe this was French that said this, but like here is a quote. Maybe not a quote, but it says Barack Obama, despite supporting abortion up to birth, I mean, even pro-choice people kind of hesitate at that because, I mean, you can't not say that's not a kid at that point. They say was actually the most pro-life president, and here it is. French insisted, quoting Jeremiah 29:11, on God's plan to give Israel hope and a future. He claimed that women had fewer abortions under Obama because his presidency gave them more hope. That's absurd. And he would point to lower abortion numbers during Obama's presidency, and there's many reasons why those numbers are there. But to try to say that pro-life, the pro-abortion Obama was more pro-life, even though he was fine with murdering babies at birth, that he gave people hope, so he was more pro-life in a sense. That's absurd and
I
ridiculous.
hope you see what he's trying to do there. Like, he's trying to manipulate you and try to come up with something to justify his hatred for Trump. Really, that's what it's coming down to, is that these people have some sort of personal vendetta against Trump, and at the end of the day, that impacts how they view this pro-life issue.
And you're 100% right on that, but I would push it even farther.
Yeah,
It doesn't end with Trump.
no,
They want you on the Democratic platform, and they are willing to make absurd comments to get you there. That is a drive, at least not their only drive, but that is a drive. And so be aware of that as well. I mean, that's absurd. They should laugh that guy. They should have laughed. Again, I'm getting upset. I need to stop.
Nonsense. Yeah. It's nonsense.
Hey, so we've got 45 minutes here. We're trying to be quicker. Much more could be said on this. You know, after reading 3 chapters, I would tell you it is almost worth buying the book just to read chapter 3.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, that is, it's eye-opening.
It exposes a lot.
All right, well,
and it doesn't even hit all of it. Like, there's
no.
so much more we could have talked about. But
yeah, we would just try to condense it. But anyway, all right. Now, next week, Lord willing, that we able to get to it next week, is Christian media and the money man. So we'll tack chapter 4 and go from there. But anyway, I hope this was enlightening. And again, come and talk to us.
Hit us up.
Let us know. So, all righty. Hope to see you next week.